Every time I make a video about the Young Turks right here on this channel, without fail, I will get a comment asking the following question. Sean, how can you watch the Young Turks? How can you subject yourself to the noise that is TYT? And I always think of the same exact answer whenever I'm asked this question, and it is the following. How can you not watch the Young Turks? This is one of the funniest shows on the internet today, and it's been running non-stop for nearly 18 years. And one of the things that makes the Young Turks so funny is their commitment to their shtick. The Young Turks is selling you the idea that there's racism all around us. That the racists and the Republicans, which are the same thing, and the white people, which again are all the same thing, are all evil white racists, and they're coming for you, and they're coming for all the minorities and all the good-hearted lefty movements that never did anything wrong. But the problem is that the Young Turks is selling you this even though they don't have the supply to match the demand that their audience is looking for. And because of this, the Young Turks has to do segments that are in no way, shape, or form examples of racism. However, they are examples of comedy gold. And that's what I'm bringing you today. Because we've heard a lot about Republicans passing laws allowing people to hit protesters, aka rioters, with their cars if they're being swarmed. And the left, and the Young Turks included in that, have been telling us that these are ways to curb the First Amendment. These are attacks on freedom of speech. The Republicans are allowing their supporters to attack and even sometimes kill their political opposition without any legitimate reason. However, we know that this is not the case. We know what's happening is that they're strengthening regular self-defense laws because there are situations where rioters surround people in cars and they start attacking the cars. And the person in the car either has the option of being yanked out of it and assaulted or even killed, or trying to use the car as a defensive weapon in order to get through the protesters. That's what these laws are all about. But since that's what these laws are all about, you can't really find good cases against this law. However, that's not going to stop the Young Turks, because what's better than a Black Lives Matter protester being hit by an evil, white, angry, conservative Republican or Republican politician? Maybe if the person driving the car was also a white nationalist that hit them specifically because they were minorities, but that's really rare. It's really difficult to find. So how about we trim it back? Instead of going and escalating, we actually go down a little bit and see what we can find. What if we can find a conservative or somebody in government that may or may not be a conservative driving near a protest? Would that be sufficient for the Young Turks to do a segment on? Yes. And that is what produced this video that is up on the Young Turks channel right now at this very moment. Judge attempts to run over protesters. Now, it's comedy gold from start to finish, but let Ana Kasparian tee it up for you.
A newly released video appears to show an appeals court judge in North Carolina attempting to run over protesters with his car. Now, these are Black Lives Matter protesters. The video that we're about to show you luckily isn't graphic because he didn't actually run them over. But before we go to the video, let me just give you some of the testimony from one of the protesters. One of them, Maya Warren, swore before the Cumberland County magistrate that Judge John M. Tyson was driving the SUV that nearly hit her and other protesters.
Okay, so Ana has laid the groundwork for you. She's even giving you testimony from one of these protesters that's definitely not perjuring herself in a way that will be uncovered on the surveillance video. And she said that she was nearly hit, along with other protesters, but her specifically was nearly hit, possibly even killed by this judge who was driving his car angrily at these Black Lives Matter protesters that were just trying to protest for their civil rights. This is the modern day civil rights movement. Shade the Black Lives Matter protest photos in black and white, and then put Martin Luther King's photo in there, and there you have it. Civil rights movement, they're looking for their rights, and this evil white racist judge, which Ana's about to show you the video of, is driving near them trying to get them because North Carolina's in the South, and this judge is probably a member of the Klan.
So with that said, with that context, let's take a quick look at the video and determine what the intention of this judge was. So you see him, he's in the SUV, you see the protesters, he's driving. An important context, a piece of context is that he was driving around a few times, and the lane that you see him in right now is where there is a Black Lives Matter mural Right here, I believe, is the moment that's relevant. No, not yet. He's gonna go around again. He's driving in a lane that is not meant for vehicles because of the Black Lives Matter mural there. And it's coming, you see him, he's still driving in the lane that he's not supposed to be driving in.
No, not yet, but it's coming. Ana swears it's coming.
And at one point, he gets awfully close to the protesters. Here it is, I think. Not yet. Was that it?
Yeah, I think it's when he hits the brakes finally because the person's in the street.
So this is what happens when your hack news organization doesn't have its anchors actually watch the video prior to doing a segment on it. I am certain in the production meeting, they went around and they said, hey, there's a story of a Black Lives Matter protester. Black Lives Matter protesters, by the way, never lied, never been caught lying multiple different times in different reports across all these states in this great country, but 100% accurate. And she says that she was nearly hit and possibly almost killed by this evil white federal judge. This evil white federal judge said in their theorem, and we got the video proof that proves it. And then they show the video and Ana's like, it's coming. And what's great about that is that they play the same video clip twice because the producer had queued it up because this is the relevant portion of the video. But Ana doesn't realize it, even though the SUV is cut off in both videos. Didn't she think that was a little odd that the same cars were around this guy and he was driving the same exact way? I understand that he may have looped around multiple times, but why would the other cars loop around multiple times? This video is nothing. It shows a guy driving, possibly in a lane that he wasn't supposed to be driving in, but incredibly slowly and not hitting anybody at all, and not even looking like he's going to be hitting anybody at all. It in fact looks like he may have gotten into that lane because there was other cars coming in the roundabout into the other lane.
So guys, there's a couple of pieces of context that's important. Number one, as Ana pointed out, obviously you're not supposed to drive in that lane for a reason, and you could see that the protesters are smushed against that fence, and they needed extra space, so they're not wrong to be in that lane. The protesters,
correct,
right? And so why is the judge driving around and around and around that same circle that the protesters are in? And so that's a good question. Will he get prosecuted because he didn't actually hit them, right? And so you can see that on the tape clearly as well. And the whole tape's 12 minutes long, and there's interpretations of what he did throughout that 12 minutes. And I don't know. We'll see if he's in some significant trouble or not.
Prosecuted for what? The only person from the video shown by the Young Turks that maybe deserves to be prosecuted is the woman who said that the judge tried to hit her with the car, because she said that in a sworn statement, and that appears to be perjury. What do you mean, will he get prosecuted? Maybe he'll get a citation for driving in that lane if he wasn't supposed to drive in that lane. Judges kind of hook other judges up, so whether or not he has to pay that citation is neither here nor there. Or, as the professionals say, neither nya nor nya. But prosecuted for what, Cenk? What are you talking about? But don't worry, this is about to get even more stupider than we are. So it's going to be stupider-er.
But I do know this. We just did the story of Andrew Brown Jr., who was shot 14 times and killed by police for driving away from police. Shot in the back of the head as he was driving away. And so, and the police and the prosecutors agreed, said, well, the vehicle is a very dangerous, lethal weapon. And so he should have been executed on the spot for driving by police officers.
Oh no, we're going here. Cenk, first of all, Brown Jr. was not shot 14 times. Ana Kasparian told us multiple different times in that video, which we covered on this channel, that he was shot at 14 times and was hit twice. In fact, Ana, when she was trying to break down and add new information, she thought it was weird that somebody would be shot at 14 times but only hit twice, even though obviously you're going to be hit with up to, but never more than the number of shots that were fired at you. Also, he wasn't driving away when the shooting started, according to that video. He was driving at two different officers. You could see the video, then the shooting started. Maybe some contagious fire happened when he was driving away. Maybe not, that's appropriate or not, but it's a totally different context. And how are you even comparing the two? Remember, the police weren't even here in this situation, so even if they were charging him with assault with a deadly weapon, the idea that you would compare the two and say that this judge should have been shot by police that weren't present because Andrew Brown, who fled from officers when they were serving felony warrants against him, was shot after nearly hitting the officers, makes no sense at all. But again, Cenk is trying to manufacture racism, and even more incredibly, he's trying to tell you that the only difference between Brown Jr. and this judge is that Brown Jr. is a black dude, and this judge apparently is a white dude. Cenk's saying that's the only distinction between these two stories. He watched both of the videos, and he thinks the only thing that separates the two is the race of the driver.
And so he should have been executed on the spot for driving by police officers. Andrew Brown Jr. did not hit any police officers. In fact, he swerved away from them and drove away, and they executed him for it. Now, here's a judge driving towards protesters.
Cenk, literally everything that you just said is 100% wrong. First of all, Brown Jr. was driving in the directions of officers. The officers moved out of the way, they could have been hit, and then he swerved to try and flee. But if Brown Jr. would have hit those officers, it seemed like he would have been totally fine with that. And if you're that close and a suspect who you are running a warrant against attempts to flee by driving in the direction of you, I understand not taking that chance. However, the judge in this case was not driving toward the protesters. The judge was driving on the road. Now again, if the judge isn't supposed to be in that lane, which I have no reason to believe is untrue, except for the fact that it came out of Cenk's and Anna's mouth, then I can understand something should be resolved in like traffic court. But the idea that Cenk's like, this guy should be executed when Brown Jr. was not executed for what he did, he used his car as a deadly weapon or presented his car as a threat, as a deadly threat, and thus he was shot at for that, and then he ultimately ended up dying, but there were no cops around. Once again, how are you going to suggest that the cops should like hunt down this judge for driving nowhere near protesters and shoot him? What are you even talking about?
I'm not saying you should use the same logic, but if you use the same logic, you would say he was just trying to commit a federal, not a federal offense, but a death penalty offense.
So I love how Cenk's like, I'm not saying that you should use this same logic that I'm applying that's completely illogical and asinine, but if you were looking at this objectively, if you were looking at this with the eyes of the Young Turks who could see all, then you would know that this guy's trying to commit a federal, not a federal offense, but a death penalty offense. First of all, Cenk, the word you're looking for is capital offense. Second of all, assault with a motor vehicle is not a capital offense. What are you even talking about? Are you insane? Why am I even asking this question? The answer is obviously yes.
Someone who was trying to use lethal force against people, and he should have been executed. Of course, I don't believe that.
He was using lethal force against other people, and he should have been executed. I mean, I don't believe that, but that's the logical implication. The only difference between the Brown Jr. video and this video is the race of the person, and honestly, this is a textbook case of racism in our society. 100% proven beyond a reasonable doubt. I guess this guy needs to be put up on capital charges because he drove slowly near some protesters in a lane that he wasn't supposed to be in, and one of the protesters may have committed perjury in reference to this. Great logic, Cenk.
But this is both in North Carolina, by the way.
Yep.
So what does the state of North Carolina believe? Is the vehicle a dangerous weapon meant that if you drive in near anyone, you're trying to kill them, or no?
I like how he keeps doubling down on this. This was both in North Carolina because Cenk gets dinged time and time again for comparing completely different states which have completely different laws and trying to say that they're similar circumstances when they're not similar at all. So he's like, they're both in North Carolina, so North Carolina has to decide what they believe. Could you execute somebody for driving near protesters, people or police officers because it's so dangerous? Or can you not? It's an open and shut case. They need to decide right now. Cenk, here's the clarification for you. If you're getting a warrant served against you, and then you back up to get more speed, back up, get more traction, and then you drive toward officers who are armed, there is a chance you will be shot at. if you're in a roundabout, and I know this is going to sound really complicated, and you're driving really slowly, and it looks like you're trying to merge into another lane, but another SUV kind of cuts you off from being able to merge over there, then you will not be shot from that. And also, it's not a capital offense, so you won't be tried among a jury of your peers, and you won't have them vote to give you the death penalty. I know this is really complicated. I know it's a little convoluted, involves some legal theory. I know we have to go all the way back to the founding of the Constitution to determine the differences between these scenarios. But that's it, Cenk. Right there, buddy. Just think about it for a second, and you'll definitely get it.
Because it seems like they have very different responses based on whether the person doing it is black and powerless or white and powerful.
Oh, I wasn't kidding. Cenk is making the case that the only difference between these two cases is that one person was black and one person was white. That's Cenk's actual take on this case.
So let me give you more context, because look, I'm gonna be honest, watching that video, it's questionable that he's driving in that lane. I think based on that video, a case can be made that he was attempting to maybe intimidate the protesters. But also based on that video, I don't know if I'm buying that he almost hit them, right? Because the way that it's being reported is he almost hit them and he missed them by like inches. That's not what I see in the video. So I want to be honest, I want to be clear about that.
I like how Ana Kasparian clearly did not watch this video before she started presenting the story. Because remember, when she read Maya Warren's sworn statement about this guy almost hitting her, she was really confident, and now she's like, well, I mean, look, Cenk, I see the video, and it doesn't look like the guy who is clearly not trying to hit protesters was in fact trying to hit protesters. Now, I'm gonna muddy the waters, I'm gonna gray it up here, even though this is a black and white issue, not a pun intended, by the way, but it doesn't look like, from the video that we can see, that he was trying to hit the protesters, and I feel like once this video goes up, we're gonna look really dumb denying what we're showing as B-roll while we're lying about it. So Cenk, let me dig up something about the judge and muddy the waters a bit.
A police spokesperson has said that the lane, which has a mural painted on it, is not open for traffic. Why was he driving in that lane?
Over and over and over again.
Now, you just heard Cenk Uygur say that he was driving in that lane over and over and over again. And they talked about earlier in this video how for 12 minutes, this guy was just circling them, and that shows his bad intent. Here is the absolute gem of this story. The police released a 12-minute video that showed the judge's driving route around the lead up to the alleged crime against him. But he was not in that area for the full 12 minutes. They actually just have him driving through downtown. So he wasn't circling them over and over and over again. In fact, it looks like he was just pushed into that lane briefly. He slowed down, and immediately when it was clear for him to get out of that lane, he did so. So there's no case here at all. There's nothing that happened. And at some point he called 911 and he said the protesters were near him. Maybe he was totally talking nonsense because I don't see any video that shows us that. But he definitely wasn't hitting anybody or attempting to hit anybody or circling for 12 minutes attempting to hit anybody. This looks like a nothing incident. Maybe there was some shouting at some point not covered by the video, and that led to the 911 call, and that led to this girl doing the sworn statement or whatever. But it appears like nothing happened in this story at all whatsoever, even less so than I actually thought initially from watching the Young Turks video.
I'd be surprised if he got convicted, and I don't want people to think that I think the North Carolina standard in Andrew Brown Jr. case is correct. It is massively incorrect. What he did, what the judge did, is not anywhere near a death penalty case, let alone any kind of conviction. Okay, so I just want them to have the same standard. And so this guy seems to have bad intent, but that doesn't mean that he's guilty of a attempted murder or anything like that. But when it's someone powerful, the car is not a deadly weapon. When it's someone powerless, all of a sudden the car is a deadly weapon, and you should get killed for it.
Right.
And that's the hypocrisy I can't stand.
Okay, Cenk, let me break it down for you because there's a lot of complicated legal theories in this, again, just like before. But when you use something as a weapon and that can cause death, then, and hear me out on this, it is considered a deadly weapon. When you don't use it as a deadly weapon and you use it as intended, it is not considered a deadly weapon. intent matters, Cenk. That's the distinction. Or maybe it's race, who knows?
And remember, there's now many states that have passed laws saying you can run over protesters and we will let you off. And maybe that's encouraging folks like this guy, Tyson, right? To drive near protesters with all those laws now saying, no, really, you can run them over and kill them and we'll let you go. And those are coming from Republicans who say their top issue is how much they care about the First Amendment. Unless, of course, you're protesting against the government from the left, in which case people can run over you with their car and kill you.
And as if I watched this video before deciding to react to it for you, we've come full circle. Now it's about these laws where Republicans say that you could run over protesters. And this story, where a judge definitely did not even come close to running over a protester, is just proof that we definitely shouldn't have laws like that let you run over protesters, because Republicans don't care about the First Amendment. I mean, it's specifically if they're attacking your car and blocking the road and threatening you, and your only way out of death or serious bodily injury is to use your car to escape. But we'll set all that aside, because here we have a case of somebody not getting hit by a car, apparently a Black Lives Matter protester lying about almost being hit by a car, and that's evidence that those laws have got to go. Can't defend yourself in a vehicle, let the mob take you, I'm sure it will work out. Cenk is on the case. Remember Brown Jr. and racism, etc. Anyway, that's all I really have for you guys today. I just thought this video was absolutely hilarious. It got 160,000 views based solely on the clickbait, and it appears that the like to dislike ratio isn't as bad as I thought it would be based on the fact that the video directly contradicts the headline and what is being said by the Young Turks. In fact, it actually caused Ana to break for a second and say, okay, maybe this story makes no sense. However, that didn't stop the editor or the person doing the titling from rolling with this as if it was a legit segment. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you liked the video, show me by leaving a like. You can subscribe for more content. You can follow me on all my social medias. They are linked in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the Young Turks doing a non-story with a clickbaity headline. Till next time.